to promote the sharing of ideas. And today, our CAL Talk is already the third one.
To start today's talk, let's first hear what they think as meaning of innovation.
Innovation is part of my life.
创新的目的在于我们用技术来改变我们的生活。Innovation is making something out of it.
呢個非常有喺當係一個熱等以前啦，你有呢個其實係啲人咧就有啲人。
Continual gradual improvement of processes or ideas.
Innovation is improving performance by doing things differently.
而家我哋嘅飛係開始接受
創意啦，同埋一個講一啲有用嘅嘢嘅人係。
Innovation is to be able to solve a problem that seems unsolvable.
好似之前電話、飛機啊，全部都要靠 innovation。
每一個時代嘅人嘅懂得嘅地方。
새로운 것을 두려워하지 않고 항상 노력하는 것.
Help us to see things from more perspectives.
Innovation is fun!
Innovation is about changes. It's about really good changes. It's about how we can actually transform really cool ideas into real products. And to me, it's very important to find out the metric. For example, today we want to find out how we can actually have better green energy, and tomorrow we want to find out new products that can change our daily life and become more convenient. So the key question is how we can actually drive new innovation according to the metric. And still the innovation comes with a major cost.
Innovation is really about bringing smiles to the faces of customers. It's about constantly asking why, and it's about novel new ways of doing things. Innovation isn't just about technology, it's about customer experiences. DBSxCAL Talk is a fantastic platform for some of the brightest students in Hong Kong, for academia, the business community to get together around innovative new technologies and customer experiences for the Hong Kong and the global marketplace. We're really excited by how this can become a platform for sharing these things across social media and video websites across the globe. That's the real exciting thing about the DBSxCAL.
The DBSxCAL Talk is a unique open platform that allows students, industry people, and business people to come together to drive the innovations. And through this platform, we're able to identify the metric that can transmission to you. And I believe the student innovation can benefit a lot from it.
创新创新
太好了。
Wow, there's a lot of different ideas on what's innovations. But I believe the essence here is really about improving our lives. Amanda, do you think so?
Absolutely. Innovation and technology are definitely bringing improvement to our daily life. Echoing with the aspiration of connect, inspire and innovate. Today, we are very honored to have our 4 guest speakers here to tell us their stories on smart living with technology. So, to start with the event today, let's invite Mr. David Lynch, Head of Technology and Operations of DBS Bank, to share a few words to us. David, please.
Hello, and welcome everyone to the third DBSxCAL Talk. Dr. Ray was reminding me today it was nearly a year ago today that we held our first event, and I think when we started this as a platform to share the messages from academia, from startups, from the business community, it's really fantastic to see the energy and momentum that's come behind this. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things today, a little bit of a look back on that journey over the last year. It's been a really wonderful partnership we've formed here with City University. City University being involved in things like our award-winning EC Loan app for corporates. Picked up its 3rd award, I think, this week, which is a fantastic result and incorporates some innovation from the City University Apps Lab students. We've run a number of internships and we continue to do that. And City University continues to help us with our rapid prototyping efforts, which is really helping us to accelerate innovation in the bank. And last time around, we also talked about the fact that DBS was launching its own accelerator. So I'm really pleased to say we're live streaming today into the Vault. We've got 10 exciting new fintech startups that are really helping DBS to reshape the future of banking. So again, I want to say a hello and a welcome to the startups who are watching live today in the Vault. And really today again is all about the speakers. It'd be wrong of me to say that the speakers today are all startups. No offense, Gary, I think Hong Kong Broadband, having gone through an IPO recently, has probably moved beyond the startup stage, but I think we're really excited today to have 3 of the most exciting startups here in Hong Kong giving up their time to come and speak to us today. Really excited to hear from, I understand it's pronounced Klook, not K-Look, Spacebox, Spacious, and also Hong Kong Broadband. And although Hong Kong Broadband doesn't fit in the startup category, for any of you who know their culture, and I'm sure Gary will talk a little bit about that, a very unique business culture and a culture I respect immensely. So without further ado, I don't want to take too much of your time. Really looking forward to hear the guest speakers today. Hope you enjoy the event. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Now we would like to invite Dr. Wei Zheng, the City University Apps Lab Director, to say a few words to us. Dr. Wei, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really excited to stand here again. I just want to echo what David has mentioned. The Alliance has come on time and create a lot of new opportunities, not just for the university student, but also we create new value to DBS. I just want to tell you more about, from the university side, what we're actually doing. For example, in the past 2 years, we have already started up over 10 different teams. So that means if each team contains 3 to 4 students, over 10 different teams has been formed. And some of them, they're actually going to give some demo as well. For the university side, the government is giving the ITF. We also receive funding from that. One thing I would like to highlight is, by the end of this month, 6 CAL members is actually going to Stanford from Cyberport, and they're going to learn the Silicon Valley culture, the fintech business, and they're going to win, I think, on behalf of Hong Kong. And there are lots of management trainee CAL members involved in organizing this event. I really appreciate the great effort and dedication for all these different events. And today, we also have a new service. For example, the YouTube people, they're actually watching us online. And once again, I really want to appreciate the great support from David. He's the soul behind the whole thing. Thank you so much, David. One thing I want to highlight is I talked to one of the student CAL members working in DBS previously. His name is called Ziyuan. And he told me that his work at DBS is working on the test cases. In fact, this is something that in the university side, we can't really have a lot of experience. But what he do in the business, in the company, he can bring back to university. And that can share the knowledge with many other students, and we really need that. And last but not least, by this weekend, we're going to teach kindergartens can code. So we are expanding our coding class from kindergarten to senior at all ages. So we've got a lot more exciting things to share with you, and I want to appreciate the great effort from the 4 speakers today. And you are carefully chosen from us, and we really appreciate it, and we look forward to sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wei. Please be seated.
Amanda, shall we start today's talk now? I can't wait anymore.
Sure. But before we have our first section, we would like to bring your attention to our online Q&A platform. You may post your questions anytime during the talk. To access to it, you may either scan the QR code on the screen or log into our webpage, caltalk.hk.
Great. Amanda, may I ask you, what's your biggest concern in your life now?
Wow, that's really a deep question. But I think most of the youngsters are like me because we are worried about getting a property in Hong Kong. You should know, it's quite hard and then I have to use a lot of efforts to search for it.
Yes, I agree. And our first speakers today will definitely agree as well. He's the founder of Space Trias, a startup that improved the searching experience for properties. It made use of advanced technology to tailor made to every user's need. It definitely understands your concern well.
Then I must now invite the founder and CEO of Spacious, Mr. Asif Ghaffur, to share with us. Asif has a strong track record of delivering cutting-edge technology solutions to solve difficult problems. Now, let's pass the time to Asif. Asif, please.
Sorry, I was just checking how to work this thing. Let's just check it does work. Okay. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's a real pleasure. I always love coming to universities. I've actually never been here before, but I've spent quite a bit of time in Hong Kong University. We've had a lot of interns join our company over the years from Hong Kong University, which is, I believe in that massively because that's actually how I started my career, through internships and graduate programs and whatnot. Just the other thing which I think is really, really exciting, and I've always thought this about technology, is when you talk about startups or innovation or technology, I think one of the things that's really incredible is you can actually have a really enormous impact on the world and the industry, even though you have no experience, right? You can just come in, build a great app and come in. So yeah, it's really exciting to be here. So I wanted to spend today giving, first of all, a brief introduction of who I am, just for people who've never heard of me or seen me before. A brief introduction of our company, what we do, and then really just try to use as much of the session as possible as a Q&A forum, where if anybody's got any questions, they can ask me. I think the purpose of what we're trying to get out of this is to share some of the experiences of having set up a company, and that's probably best done through a Q&A forum rather than me just talking to you guys. So I am originally from London. I grew up in London, I was born and raised there. I also studied there. I went to University College London. I studied maths and computer science. I graduated in 2001, a very long time ago. Straight out of university, I went to work for a bank, which is, I guess, the very kind of traditional standard route that most people kind of go down. I worked for Goldman Sachs for 6 years in London. They then internally relocated me to Hong Kong in 2007. That's how I ended up here. And then I worked for them here for 2 years, and then I went to Standard Chartered Bank. I've actually just applied for my PR. I went this morning to get it, so I'm a permanent resident now. That's quite exciting. So that's kind of a brief history of me. And in 2013, after having spent 11 years in banking, I decided on a personal level that I wanted a different challenge. It definitely helps that I wasn't married and have kids and that kind of stuff. I think that people in my kind of age group, when they have those types of things, it's a lot harder to make those kind of choices. But for me, it was easier. And real estate is actually something that's also in my blood, so to speak, because my family business in the UK is in real estate. My father's built a real estate investment company over 30 years. So real estate, technology, and just my own personal experience of trying to find a place to live in Hong Kong was just terrible. So it just made sense. You know what? This is a logical thing for me to do. The market opportunities there. I think I thought I could have executed it well. So that's the thought process around the company. It was pretty much founded with a laptop on my knees, sitting in Pacific Coffee in the middle of 2013, which seems like a very long time ago now, but it was actually not that long ago. We launched the product in August 2013. We were able to demonstrate enough traction and user growth and whatever, such that we were actually able to raise our first funding round for $500,000 in April 2014. Using that, we were able to accelerate the product development, the business development, get some more traction, and then ultimately close our second funding round, which actually just happened for $3 million. And the plan is to use that money to take the business to Taipei, to Shanghai, to Shenzhen, and Beijing. So we're looking to scale out pretty quickly, as well as accelerate Hong Kong. So we're going to start paying for some bus ads soon, so you might see us on the side of a few buses. That's quite exciting. So that's just a brief overview of the company, of who I am. So in terms of the business itself, who are we, what are we trying to do? I think for me personally, having spoken to a lot of people, the three pain points that really became apparent when people are looking for property. The first one is most of the existing players in the market had an absolutely terrible user experience. Very difficult to use their websites, counterintuitive, just not fun to use, not good to look at, right? I think it's important for a website to be beautiful, right? A lack of market transparency, right? I think in a market like Hong Kong, there's an enormous amount of power in the hands of real estate agents, right? If you want to find out about something, you've got to ask the real estate agent. And unfortunately, the real estate agent is only ever going to be incentivized to do one thing, which is push the prices up, because they get paid based on commission. So where's that independent data view, right? That shows you what's happening with prices, what are the characteristics of specific neighborhoods, how many people, what percentage of people in a particular neighborhood are single, right? Those are the kind of questions that people really think about when they look for housing, right? So we want to be able to answer all of those questions that you care about through data. And then the third one is relevant content, such that if you want to read about a particular neighborhood, if you want to have, if you want to understand what's cool about a particular neighborhood, but then also the listings themselves, how do we get better quality listings with better pictures, with more information on those listings themselves. So the three things, superior user experience, analytical tools, and relevant content, those are really the three things that we've been very, very focused on, and how, this is the crux of how we think we can solve the problems of the market. And that's our tagline, finding a great place to live is not really easy, which I think is quite good. So who uses us? So we've got real estate agents. I should also put landlords. We also have landlords who list with us. Hotel groups, service departments, and property developers, not software developers. They list with us. We're available through the web, mobile, tablet. We then present those listings back to people who are searching for property, and they can either be renters, buyers, property investors. We get users from everywhere. We get users from people who are searching for property from abroad, domestically, English, Chinese, the whole spectrum. And I think this was something else that I thought about when I first thought about this business, why set it up in Hong Kong. If you think about the ultimate value of a technology startup, then I think the answer to that question is scalability, right? In theory, a company like Uber can go from one market to 150 cities in the space of a year, right? So I think when you think about setting up your business, it's important to think about how you can make your business scalable, right? And so one of the things that I thought about was, we're targeting the Asian market, the Asian demographic. We're not going to go to London, we're not going to go to US. Hong Kong, I think, is a very good place to set up if you've got that in mind, because Hong Kong is actually, in a lot of ways, the most complex city in Asia, I think. It's got quite a few different market segments that just don't exist in other cities. Places like Seoul and Tokyo, and even Singapore, they're generally a lot more homogeneous. And so if you actually are talking about building your product and picking your test market, in order to be successful in Hong Kong, I think you need to actually cover the largest number of use cases, which is great because then you can just go to China, right? In order to be well in Hong Kong, you have to cover 3 languages: English, simplified, and traditional Chinese, right? That's not something that a company based out of Singapore would have to think about. So, yeah, it's working pretty well. Some of the people that we're working with, I mean, we're focusing pretty much across the board, but we've been lucky enough to get in with some of the larger players. I don't know if you guys have heard of any of these people, but they're all reasonably big, which is quite nice. So, we're working with them. They're helping us improve the product, and we're developing further product lines with them as well. In terms of the user growth of the site in general, it's been pretty good. We've been going at about 45% month on month since we've started, since inception, which is good. I mean, a combination of organic traffic. We've spent an enormous amount of time on SEO. We've got a very active blog, and we do all kinds of things. We've had an enormous amount of press. We've been in Bloomberg, Forbes, South China Morning Post, and so all of that helps with SEO, which is handy because it's free. We also spend money on AdWords, Google AdWords, Facebook advertising, etc., etc. The conversion rate of the website, conversion being defined as what percentage of people come to the website and then convert into an inquiry, is also improving well. Visitors growing up. Oh, there's a title there. That's in the last couple of months. This data is from the last couple of months. It's all been improving well in the last couple of months. In terms of the site itself, we've got about 16,000 sell listings at the moment, 25,000 rental listings. The average value of a sale inquiry is 1.2 million US. So the market that we are hitting is, I would say, slightly above, probably in the middle somewhere. I mean, 1.2 million US doesn't buy you much in Hong Kong. And 23,000 Hong Kong dollars a month, which translates into 71K USD over 24 months, the value of a rental contract. So fast, accurate, easy to use, proprietary data platform, deduplication, high-quality listings benefit all market participants. These are I think the messages that basically I print these things out and I stick them on the wall in the office so that everybody can see them. This is what we're about, and bringing all of those. There's one set of problems, but this is how we want people to feel when they kind of, I guess, look at us and use us. As I mentioned earlier, we've had a lot of good media coverage, which I think is important for any startup. I think media is in a lot of ways the oxygen that most startups live off, because ultimately it's free. So we've done pretty well there. We were also incubated by the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park, which was phenomenal help. Very, very good. We were there for a good while. They gave us a lot of good support. I think that's another great thing about Hong Kong. Places like Cyberport and the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park, they do provide good support. We've also been recognized in the Hong Kong IRC in their annual website awards program a couple of times, so that's pretty good. And yeah, that's the sum of it. So that's who we are as a company. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't want to spend the whole time just talking and having you guys kind of sit there and listen. Given this is meant to be a session about sharing and what it takes to build a company, let's go straight into the Q&A, I think.
Thank you, Answer. So now, it's a Q&A section. If you guys have any questions, please raise up your hand.
You said that before the other competition, like the other property companies, they had a very ugly website, they had a bad. Do you think that it was mainly because there was no real competition or no real need to innovate through that venue, and therefore you kind of had a space to come in and there was like an opportunity that no one just kind of took advantage of until you guys came along, or was it something that you think that you guys had a competitive edge over?
Okay, I mean that's a great question. So I think just to paraphrase what you're saying, I think what you're asking is why did the gap exist, right? And basically how were we able to come in and take advantage of it, right? I think Hong Kong is an interesting city, right? There's a lot of things that I think Hong Kong does really well, right? So if you think about the question of, you know what, where's the easiest place in Asia to set up a business, right? Most people would say, oh, Hong Kong's a really easy place to set up a business, right? Because you can go down to the company registry and get the paperwork all done in like 24 hours. But there's a lot more than that, right, to set up a business. You need to be able to hire the right people. If you're talking about a technology company, being able to hire the right developers is a major, major challenge, right? Raising money in this city, I think it's a lot easier now than it used to be, but up until a couple of years ago, it was very, very difficult, right? So actually, you know, those problems, I mean, there's a lot of other things, but those two things in particular, hiring the right people and raising money, I think it's actually enabled a lot of really terrible websites to survive a lot longer than they would have done in other places. So I think there has been a lack of competition because it's really hard, right? It's not easy. In recent years, I think there's been a lot more focus on startups, events like this, and whatever. But even if you go back 2 years, nobody was talking about startups, right? This is a little bit of a, let's jump on the bandwagon, right? So I think there has been a lack of competition historically. I think the other thing which I've seen, right? A lot of companies in places like Hong Kong and Asia, they almost disrespect technology, right? And that may sound like a funny thing to say. I'm really biased, by the way, because I'm a software developer and I've been coding for 15 years, right? So I've got a biased opinion here. But I think a lot of people in Asia, they still see, the tech guy and the business guy, and the tech guy belongs in the basement, and the business guy should wear a suit, right? That's the reality of how people see technology in this part of the world still, right? And what that leads to is, I think you get an atmosphere in corporations and small companies where technology people don't feel appreciated, right? They feel really underappreciated. They feel like they're being, SHIT on every day, right? And you know what? They don't feel like, I'm going to contribute. They're just going to sit there and they're going to just do what they're told, right? And ultimately, I think if you want to build a great technology company, you need your technology guys to be contributing, right? Because if you think about where innovation in a tech startup comes from, right? Most of the time, it's not some guy sitting there having a brilliant idea on a whiteboard, right? It's because you're able to do 1 or 2 functions faster, more reliably than the next guy, right? And how does that happen? It basically happens because, your tech guys are out there, right? Monitoring the forums, incentivized to look for small, JavaScript libraries or whatever it is, some guy in Canada who's written an open source library, which I'm never going to know about, right? No one else is going to know about except the guy who's got his hands in the mud every day. He's the only one who's going to know about it. If he doesn't feel like, this could give us a 5% improvement on our sign-up form in performance. If he doesn't feel like he's got that incentive to come back and say that because the boss is just going to say, oh, okay, so you're going to stay in the office till 11 today. Okay. So I think it's corporate culture. I think it's the lack of competition because it's been so hard to set up companies. That's what I think I've realized, having done this for a couple of years now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Asif. Maybe we can take one more question.
Hi, I think you addressed a little bit of this question just now, but why did you choose to focus your market in Asia rather than going back to the UK or in Europe?
Specifically with our business, part of the pitch, for us is to say a lot of these problems have been solved in the UK and the US. The process of finding a property in the UK and the US is a lot easier than it is in Asia. So we're saying, given the size of the underlying market, everybody knows property is a big deal, right? Why does the online experience have to be so bad? So we're saying, you know what? The problem here is that it's worse. The opportunity to add value. I think when you're thinking about creating a business or something like that, you always got to think about, you know, where can you actually create value, right? And I think for us, this is where we can create the most amount of value for what we're doing.
Thank you.
So now, I see some questions in the front just now. Yeah.
I just wonder that nowadays more and more people from like mainland China or other countries will come to Hong Kong to study and they want to rent house. But the first thing they want to do is to find a roommate. So is there any possible that can have a platform for them to find a roommate?
Yeah, that's not something we do right now, but I think in the future, you know, that's definitely something that we'll look at. It's a big issue. I mean, in terms of the user traffic that we got on our website, we actually get an enormous number of searches from mainland China. People looking for apartments, you know, in and around universities in particular, as you said. So, yeah, I think at some point we need to address that, but at the moment, this is, I guess, the residential space is a bigger market. I mean, there's also the commercial market. There's tons of issues in the commercial market as well. There's a lot of work to be done, which is exciting. So, yeah, to be confirmed.
Thank you very much, Hassan. Please be seated.
Okay. I'm off.
And we will move on to the next sharing. Amanda, so now your property search concern is solved by Spatial. What's next?
Sign, as you know, Hong Kong's property is so expensive, and I could hardly afford a very big apartment. And my apartment is so small, and I got a lot of stuff, so maybe I need some assistance for that.
Then the next speaker must be able to help you. Our second speaker is the co-founder of Spacebox, which aims to improve Hong Kong people's homes life by providing easy and convenient external storage. By just several clicks online, households and businesses can now use their space more effectively.
Originally, we had Mr. Stuart Cern as our speaker, but he couldn't make it today. But luckily, we have his brother, Mr. Louis Cern, the CEO of Spacebox, as our speaker. So now, let's warmly welcome Louis to come onto the stage. Louis, please.
Hi guys, thank you very much for having me today. Pleasure to be speaking. As the announcers have mentioned, Stuart was supposed to be here today, but he couldn't make it. So I started the company together with Stuart, and I developed the original concept back last summer. So I'll take this opportunity to speak not so much about what we're doing as Spacebox day to day. I'll take the panel to speak about why we did this, what is it that drove us to develop this business idea, and I'll share with you some of the lessons that we have picked up over the past 10 months of working towards this business. So first of all, just to give it a bit of a context, I will explain you what Spacebox is. Spacebox is a tool to get your room organized and to get more space. The idea is that our users use our application to create an inventory of physical items that they do not need at home. We then go and collect these things from our users. We put these items and belongings in an external storage, and our users can then access them by using their digital inventory online. So it's basically an infinite storage at your doorstep. It's a way to have as much space as you like in your home, in a sense. But what I think is interesting when you look at startups is think, why do you do this? Because when you speak with different founders, one thing that you can realize is that when people think of opportunity, it's very seldom just a pure economic incentive that drives them to do something. There's usually something else that nags them. Asif probably was very bothered by the fact that he couldn't get a decent apartment easily. He had to go and see 60 different properties that were all poor without having a way to screen that. Something similar happened in our case too. And in my case, my frustration, my very big frustration here with Hong Kong, was something to do with real estate. And to name it very clearly, I just felt that real estate in Hong Kong was so bad. It's such a crappy product in a sense. I've been coming to Hong Kong since 2004, and I've been living here permanently since 2009. And when you've been outside of Hong Kong, you can very easily tell that on the basis of what you're paying for real estate, in Hong Kong, you're getting a very, very poor product when you compare it to similar economies that have equal income levels, where people could buy a better product possibly. And it's very interesting when you think of the real estate market. What are the words that people use to describe users? Consumers. Tenants, residents. For some reason, you're no longer a consumer when you talk about real estate. And that means that in the case of Hong Kong, you have to deal with a very small apartment that's built with very poor materials, has no thermal insulation, it's very energy inefficient, has no soundproofing. It's just a place that could be a nice home, simply isn't. So I was always very frustrated with this, and about a year and a half ago, I started looking at a tangential business to try and do something about it. I really wanted to develop something that helped people get better homes. And the idea that I was looking at was furniture. I was thinking, can we make better furniture to help people develop better homes? And by researching this concept around furniture, I'm not going to get into too much detail about what that was, I started looking at how we use space in our homes. And the first thing that struck me was noticing that except for where you sit and where you sleep, everything else that you put in your home in terms of furniture is a storage system. Virtually everything else. You don't notice it, but then I invite you all to go back home, sit in the living room, have a look around, and realize that everything there is to store stuff. And then the second point is that it's not just all furniture in your home. The majority of the things that you put in those containers never gets touched. You don't use it. You just don't touch it. It's just there, right? So it's almost paradoxical. It just, from the outside, when I started looking at it, it looked like a strange behavior. We pay this incredible amounts of money for a very poor product in terms of our homes. And when we have that, when we finally got it, we fill it up with storage. We literally use 50% of the space to store things that we then don't touch. So I turned my thinking around and I thought, well, rather than trying to solve it with better or more suitable furniture, why don't we change the approach a little bit? Why do we not take people's belongings out of the home and make them available online? And this is how I came up with the idea to develop Spacebox. So far it's been going very well. And right now we have our first several hundred users. We have traction months and months. So it really does seem that we have found a tool that can be useful. And it's in the very early days of development. For now, it's a very basic product. But what gives me a lot of confidence is to see that 90% of our users are Hong Kong Chinese, and that we just get extremely positive feedback. People that are adopting it early say very clearly, I love this. It's convenient, it's useful. I see a logic. Thank you for doing this. So this is where we're at with Spacebox. And I guess the other thing that I wanted to do was to tell you a little bit about what I, as an entrepreneur, and this is not the first company that I run, I've discovered about trying to run something that's more towards innovation, like what we're doing, and trying to run it specifically in Hong Kong. So if you're thinking about starting a business, a company, I'm sure you will go online and start reading all sorts of advice from Inc.com, Entrepreneur, Y Combinator's articles, all sorts of blogs about an enormous amount of information of what it takes to open a business and what are the common pitfalls. And I thought I'd share what I felt was useful, because there are many things that I read, but somehow they didn't come contextualized, so I could not really learn, in a sense, even though there are things that I had read about somehow. One of the ones that struck me very early on was that there's a very famous statement by Steve Jobs, everybody's got to reference him, and he says, customers don't know what they want. And I really felt this to be true, particularly when you talk about something that people cannot materially see. When I had the idea for Spacebox back in August 2014, I started going around to the public in Hong Kong asking, hey, what do you think of this idea? We take your belongings, we put them outside, you access them online. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. This is not for me. And we got this feedback continuously, whoever we spoke with the exception of English speaker and Mandarin speaker. It was very particular for Hong Kong Cantonese. And that was a bit of a troubling information, if you like. But I realized that after that wasn't information. I was simply asking people to do something extraordinarily difficult. If you ask people to evaluate a concept, they're not like you, they're not thinking about it day in, day out, night. They just give you 2 minutes of their time to give you their first feelings, and they're not going to make any effort. So naturally, most people are simply not going to be able to visualize what you're proposing. And this was very clear because when we developed the first prototype, because I didn't stop myself with initial research, when we developed a prototype and we put it in front of people, a couple of slides, a simple application for people to play with, then people saw the point, and the response was very, very different. Oh yes, this really applies to me, or no, this does not apply to me because. So I guess the point is, be very careful when you have an idea in being very protective towards that idea. Because the feedback you will get from people that have not thought about this before is not going to be useful unless you can present them a product. If you can present the product, then you're going to get information. You're going to get meaningful information about what's good and what's not good. Concepts, you're not going to get very good feedback from concepts. And I think this is important because what tends to happen when you want to start a business, you've got an idea, you're passionate about it, but you have a lot of doubts. And doubts are very dangerous in entrepreneurship because doubts stop you. Doubts are what prevent you from fulfilling your work. The only thing that we cannot afford as entrepreneurs is to doubt ourselves in a way. We really have to just drive for action. So I would really warn you, if you have an idea, against doing too much preliminary customer surveying because I don't think it's very useful. I spent a lot of my time and it was a waste of time. It would have been better to just build a product and then go out and propose it and see what information I could gather that way. The other thing that I'd like to add is that, because I noticed this in Hong Kong a lot with the young entrepreneurs, is don't be secretive. Whatever idea you guys have, someone else has already had it. And if you talk to people that can give you meaningful business insight, it's going to help you. And what is also very important, when you're starting a business, you need help from everyone, whoever you can find. And there is only one way to get help from people, and it's trust. And if you're secretive, people will not trust you. So whatever idea you have, take it, run with it, discuss it with people. And as I said, just in the point before, protect it too. Don't let yourself be swayed too much. Follow your instincts, your feelings. Final point, Asif has touched on this before, and this is very pragmatic. I don't know what the fundraising environment used to be in Hong Kong 2 years ago. I can only imagine that Asif probably had a very hard time with it, and much praise to him for managing to get through it. But I still find that the fundraising environment in Hong Kong is still very immature. It's very difficult for companies to raise funds. Very, 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 very difficult. And just look at one thing, guys. When you hear all these entrepreneur stories in Hong Kong, however unfortunate it may sound, in the biggest cases, it's actually second, third generation wealthy individuals that raise money internally. That's the reality. They're called entrepreneurs, but they're just people that have money and can tap that to grow their business. So the point here is, if you want to do something, start from day zero to look for money. Literally, don't wait any more than that, because it's going to be a lot slower than you expected. And yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
So now is the Q&A section.
Hello, Luis. My name is William. I have a question. If I just search your website, I have a question to ask is that you mentioned that you have a number of warehouses over Hong Kong. I would like to know the number. And also, do you actually own those warehouses? Because, land prices in Hong Kong are very expensive.
Yeah, so for our business, Asif referred to scalability earlier on, and in our case, what our value comes from creating a product that is useful for households, giving them tools that help them to get organized, and give them a link up with a logistics system. Our value does not come from owning warehousing. The approach that we take right now is that we use third-party warehousing. So we have a standard of procedures and security that needs to be followed, and then we just go on the market and outsource the warehousing. And the logic for that is that if you want to build a startup and at the same time you want to rent, buy, negotiate land, it doesn't really work very well, or at least it's not very capital efficient.
But what if, by accident, you lost your customers?
But first of all, we've never lost any customers' belongings, and everything is insured. So.
You mean insured by the customer or by your?
By our insurance provider. So everything is insured.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So any more questions?
Hi, I'm Albert from DBS. I'm just wondering, how do you differentiate yourself from other competitors in Hong Kong, like Boxful, like Megabox? Because you guys are doing like pretty much the same thing, and I'm just wondering how you differentiate yourself from the others.
So a couple of points. I mean, I think I'm really happy I have competition, because when I started, my biggest problem was telling the world about what I was trying to do. And when you're alone, it's difficult. It's not easy, and people's time bandwidth is very limited. So the fact that there is more competition out there working on PR, getting the message across, is very helpful. In fact, it's very clear to me that we've seen more growth than we would have seen if there weren't that big competition. Then the differentiation is in terms of both the business model, because Boxful is trying to build a vertically integrated business whereby they own trucks and they own warehouses and so forth. We're more focused on building a platform and a set of tools to help get people organized, and then a connection with logistics. So storage for us is just one of the initial user cases that we're developing, and as we continue to roll out products, you will see how the companies take different directions.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Any more questions?
So out there.
Hello. When you started the company, have you ever encountered where people resist to use your the company, or they have some trust problems? Because there are some companies that have already been developed and running successfully. So when your company started, did you encounter any problems like these?
Anytime you do something that is outside mainstream, you will always encounter huge resistance. This is a known problem with any product, any business. I mean, if you look at the examples of washing machines have been around for a long time, but it took 40 years for people to accept their use. Potatoes were imported in Europe in the 16th century, and it took 200 years to persuade people to eat them, right? For a variety of reasons. And the same is true for anything else, really. So when you look at what we're doing, yes, it takes time, effort, and education to get people to start using your product. And that's why I mentioned I'm really not worried by competition today, because our product is a product that we're trying to develop and design for a very large pool of people in Hong Kong. So having someone out there helping you to spread the gospel is not bad.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Cheers. Okay, that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Amanda, just out of curiosity, where do you want to go in your next vacation?
Well, I really want to visit India because I heard it's quite beautiful there.
I heard India is great too. For trip planning, have you ever heard Clock?
Yes, indeed. My friend told me once before. Cloak, a short form of Keep Looking, is a one-stop shop helping travelers to book tours and activities. Cloak also aims to support communities through responsible tourism by partnering only with local social enterprises and responsible tour operators.
Yes, let me introduce you to co-founder, Mr. Eric, not far today. Before founding Clock, Eric was working in investment bank, focusing on advising consumer and travel companies, which aspire his passions in making traveling as his career. Now, let's invite Eric to take over the stage. Eric, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. So after hearing, I guess, 2 speeches about apartments, properties, I'm going to move you away into the travel space, because from what we believe, travel is really part of everyone's life nowadays. Like especially for people in Hong Kong, we jump at every single opportunity to travel, whether it's a long weekend and so forth. So my name is Eric. I'm the co-founder of Club Travel, and what we kind of tweaked the title today to Smart Travel with Technology. So when you guys travel, people are very familiar. Booking flights and hotels is very easy. So what comes next is basically all the fun memories that you can make when you get to that destination. But planning those and booking those are actually becoming very easy now with Klook. So this is what we call the next frontier in travel, which is really the last leg of the travel market, from flights, hotels, to now travel activities. And if you look at the greater spectrum, right, online penetration for flights is actually very high. Nowadays, people would easily go to Expedia, or now even skipping these platforms and going to like Cathay Pacific or Singapore Airlines because we have airfares much cheaper. Hotels, similarly, you have now Airbnb, and you would also start skipping platforms and going directly to Starwoods and St. Regis to book your room. But when it comes to activities, that's the kind of like the part that was being kind of ignored in the entire market. But we think right now is the right time to disrupt the market because first off, it's actually a massive market. It's 250 billion globally in terms of value. And the opportunity exists is because it's largely fragmented. So if you think about it, when you go to Bali and you want to go diving, there's probably like dozens and 50 of operators that are offering diving experiences. How do you pick? How do you negotiate prices? Are you able to book till the last minute? This is all the problems that people are facing when traveling. And we believe that the rise of mobile will really be a game changer for this market. It will completely change how people will be using technology during the travel. And I'll go in a little bit more detail later about that. So what is Klook? So we are basically now the #1 platform in Asia for travelers to explore and book travel activities, whether you are trying to plan your trip before your departure, whereby the desktop version will come a little bit more handy, or when you're on the road, the mobile app will become very useful. So right now we are in 24 destinations across Asia. We'll have over 1,000 carefully selected experiences. So we're working with all the major players in the travel sector, from Disneyland, Ocean Park, Universal Studios, working with them directly, and to some of the hundreds and thousands of really unnamed, very small operators that we'll also bring online. Right now we are actually headquartered in Hong Kong, but we have an office in Shenzhen and Taipei, and we'll be setting up in Southeast Asia very soon. So who do we target? We target basically everyone who is traveling within Asia. And if we put that into perspective, it's about the 250 million people that are traveling in Asia. 150 million are just the general English-speaking travel, like me here, that are traveling in the Asia-Pacific region. But we also target the really fast-growing outbound Chinese travelers who are looking for more unique experiences nowadays. So that's why Klook actually exists in English, traditional Chinese, and simplified Chinese. This chart quickly shows you, the fast growth of an experience over the past 12 months. We actually launched exactly a year ago from yesterday. Right now we have over 300,000 users. Our revenue has been growing over 50% over the past few months, month over month. And I think that's one thing that I really want to emphasize here is basically this orange chart, which represents our mobile app bookings. We really launched our mobile app in May with Android and iOS, and within 4 months, it's already 60% of our bookings. And if you look at traffic, it's probably close to 80%. Which brings me to my next point. This is a quote that I saw recently, and I really agree with it, whereby it says, mobile is no longer a cut-down subset of the real internet. Because these days, mobile is the internet. And I think this is very true, especially in Asia. In China, I think it's definitely true. A lot of people actually also were surprised to find that even in Southeast Asia or in Hong Kong, the mobile usage and adoption is actually very mature already. And this was a quote actually from one of the major VCs in the States. So, but with mobile, there's one thing, a consequence that I think mobile brought to us, whether you look at Uber, and so forth, whereby we become a lot more spontaneous, right? And to some extent, we become impatient. When we open the app and we want something, we'll click it, and if you don't receive that SMS or you don't receive that information at that very moment, we're frustrated. And this is actually an even bigger problem in the activity space. Because for flights and hotels right now, if you go to Expedia or Cathay Pacific, you can get the confirmation right away. The reason why activity space has been lagging is because there is no real-time confirmation. Because every single operator is very small. They don't some of them in Southeast Asia probably don't even have a computer, which basically make real-time availability a must to be able to have mobile. And we are proud to say we're the first company to be able to crack that, to allow you to now book instantly, get the confirmation right away, and be able to experience that activity at that very second. So if you imagine in the old days, you know, if you were going to say Ocean Park Halloween is coming and you need a ticket to go to Ocean Park, you'll be going to Ocean Park on that day and lining up in front of a ticketing counter to get that ticket. And usually you'll get it at the high walk-in price because we already know that you're there, so why should give you a discount? But nowadays this will completely change with Book. You no longer have to pre-book. You can book when you're already at that destination. You can literally in front of the Ocean Park gate through our mobile app, get the instant confirmation, get the e-ticket. Because it's a mobile voucher, you don't need to print, and you can just skip the queue and go in. And third, we actually offer unbeatable prices. We generally, all the attractions, theme park experiences is up to 50% off. So I really give basically a traveler no reason to not really buy that ticket with Klook instead of lining up in front of Disneyland Ocean Park to do that. So this is basically the mobile app that we were talking about. So another example, and I guess as simple as a airport express ticket. Next time when you land into Hong Kong airport, you can just hop onto the train without having to line up at that counter. While you're sitting on that train, you can basically open the Klook app and buy that airport express ticket at 30% off, and then get that confirmation right away, and then redeem that voucher when you arrive at the Hong Kong station, and then just walk out. So this is the convenience that we're really bringing. So what has the app really stand today? 1 week into our launch, which was actually a very surprise to us, where Apple featured us as really placed us in the #1 position in the best new app category in 14 countries across Asia. And then we are also constantly featured by Samsung, which really brings me to the next point is, when we achieve that, a lot of people come to us is, what really makes a good product nowadays in the startup space, or when you have to open an app? I mean, app nowadays, there's so many of them. And what we've really gotten out of it is 3 things. The first one is attention to details. And that's something that I've constantly tried to remind our colleagues, the new colleagues who are joining. And I think that's probably I would say an advantage / being picky about the details on every single page because of the previous experience at Morgan Stanley. I was doing investment banking, and if people are familiar with investment banking, everyone's very picky to every single punctuation, the lining up of paragraphs or points. And I personally find that, you know, when you start a product, or when you don't have experience in that, how important it is to make sure that every single detail on that is aligned. To make sure that people, when they use it and when they see your product, they feel like this is actually professionally made, even though you're just a startup. But through that experience, we've also learned is whereby don't be too picky in terms of you can't have everything perfect. So it's a balance, but attention to details. Second is listening to your customers. Before we launched our mobile app, we actually started a few focus groups on Facebook, on WeChat in Hong Kong, across different regions to understand what consumers are looking for. Once we launched that, we also constantly try to get feedback from these focus groups so we can constantly improve on our product. And third is basically what I think is very important nowadays is creating value. And I think with a number of startups nowadays coming up, what we see is it's a lot about putting existing things on a new platform, make it very beautiful, and then it's like, hey, this is my proposition. And what we realized, this is what we started off with, and realized that people would like it at the very beginning, but eventually they'll find that it's actually not really adding value to me. So what we really try to find out is what will create that value for the customers to stick with you. And for us, it was this instant information, the convenience that we're bringing to the customers. And lastly, I think it's really about the team, because anything else and everything else is executed by the team. Very similar to what Asper was saying, we believe that idea is very important, but at the end of the day, it comes down to execution. Because everywhere else, one idea is being executed in any place in the world. We've been, I would say, lucky to have built a team around 30 now, based in the 3 regions, and bringing people from different backgrounds to basically add value to this product and continue to excel on that. So that's basically my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And now is the Q&A section.
Hi. Excuse me. I want to ask, how do you get your name actually, the Klook?
Oh, well, yeah, the Klook name actually stands for keep looking. So as in like, we'll keep looking for new experiences for you. That's how it came from.
Okay, thank you very much.
You emphasize very much on value creation for your customer. Can you elaborate more how you create value for your customers? When I look at your slides, I mean, apparently one thing that you have created is the discount, that when a customer comes onto the store, but apparently, I mean, the customer can sometimes also profile the website of that particular provider, such as when they go to Ocean Park, I mean, they can simply log on to Ocean Park, export and buy, for example, right? I mean, that so-called value creation is very, very fragile from my perspective. I mean, how do you create that value for your customers, number one, and how do you compete when you are saying you actually target at those Chinese outbound visitors, and how do you compete with the big players such as Ctrip, China? Apparently, I mean, they also have a lot of struggle in these activities, outbound activities area. I mean, how's your competitive edge, and how do you think you can do better than these very, very big suppliers?
Sure. So what I'm hearing is two questions. One is how Klook is really bringing value. Second is kind of the China market for the outbound. So one thing, if you look from our perspective, when we look in the activity space, is we're actually not new. In the States, there's a major competitor called Viator, which is kind of acquired by TripAdvisor. In Europe, there's a major one. In Asia, there's actually a number of startups in this space, including Hong Kong. We've seen that there's a very fundamental problem if you look at it. And there's been waves of people in the activity space, but no one has been able to crack yet. Is volume just doesn't increase. So what we saw is people just say they will list a Disneyland on their page. Let's say the price will be cheaper or probably slightly or similar to what Disneyland is selling. I don't think there's a competitor whereby they sell Universal Studios Japan ticket more expensive on one official website. And the reason they gave was because I'm giving you a service of getting you that ticket, so therefore I'm charging you extra. And that's definitely not where we are. So the value is actually not on the price. The price is actually where we kind of convinced you to come to us as a new platform because you need that trigger, and that's what we believe. But what we really, and then end of the day, gave out is the convenience. It is the fact that you can book till the last second. And I have to say till today, there's no one that can allow you to book till the last second unless you buy it from Disneyland website, probably in front of the door. But if you're in front of the door, you'll just buy it from the gate. And you'll be getting an original price. So that's why would they come to us? Because of the price. But after the price is the fact that I'll allow you to buy the last minute, I'll allow you to have a mobile ticket, and then you can just scan the code and just go in and you can skip the line. These two has been the core competencies of creating value. And if you look at the thousands of reviews that we've received, the customers have been emphasizing on these 2 points. And these two, I wouldn't say it's actually very hard to do because can you convince Disneyland to open the system to you, to connect to it? They actually never done that before. Have MTR allow you to book till the last second on the mobile app? They actually never used to do that. So we are definitely the first mover in that, and now we want to continue to push on that. Second is basically on the China part. The China part is a very different animal. I think in any kind of startup, everyone aspires to be in the China market. First of all, we think China, like I showed in one of the slides in Asia, China outbound into the world is fast growing, but it's actually still a small percentage. What we've seen is there's actually a great opportunity right now out there in the entire Pan-Asia market where we have a very a reason to exist. But with China outbound, you mentioned Ctrip, Qunar, Yumama, and everything. They do everything from flights, hotel to car rentals and all sort of things. Whereas competition is definitely a lot more fierce. Our competitive edge compared to those guys is the fact that we focus on the things that they don't have. It is the resources that we can control because we are actually outside of China and we are in those destinations, and to be able to have a first-hand control of those experiences and be able to find experiences that their team cannot even get. You would be surprised, like, oh, Ctrip cannot get an experience in Cambodia. It's not that literally cannot get. It's just we are at this point of time, we're just too busy with something else. So we are not looking at this market. In the startup space or in entrepreneurial, it's about finding the right opportunity. So, and you'll be surprised to know that Ctrip hotels portfolio in the international market is actually supplied by Agoda directly to Ctrip. Ctrip actually does not connect to any of the hotels outside of China. It's through a different partner. So that's where we see ourselves as a little bit differentiator, controlling the resources outside of China, and this is where our focus has been. Yeah.
Maybe one more question.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. There's a light.
I just would like to go a little bit deeper regarding the last question you had. Actually, like all the OTA, like Ctrip now, but you have also like all the social community in China, like Cheer, like Bread Talking, and I was wondering, this society start having like some offices in this area. Like for example, I read an article recently about the fact they just opened an office in Thailand, in Bangkok. So at this stage, they are going to get a really localized experience. And so my main question regarding Klook is like how you are going to differentiate yourself in the future. Is there to be as big as possible regarding the times and the investments comparing to big company like the first I had in mind, for example, Sure. I think you read something like they just set up something in Bangkok.
So sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't really get the question.
Yeah, sorry. My question is, so not the competition coming from the big OTA in China, but the competition coming from what they call like the social community, which are becoming OTA as well in China mainland. I'm thinking about, do you know Cheer or Bread Talking? You know, and they have like a huge community of travelers, and right now these travelers give advices. And at the same time, they allow you to book some trip, and I just read like they started to have their own office abroad. So.
Okay, understood. And I guess still on the China market, I think the social community, I guess, platform that you're talking about, like Breadtrip, Chongyou, they are definitely a social platform, like very similar to like I guess Facebook or WeChat, where they're just a community of users. That's actually not our focus at this point in time. We are very much trying to answer a very fundamental demand is, right now you have to go to Ocean Park Halloween, how are you going to buy that ticket? Other than just going to Ocean Park to buy it, or going to walk down to a travel agent offline and get that ticket. We are actually trying to answer that I guess fundamental demand right now at this point in time, especially outside of China. For those community, I would have to say our DNA is not in the community, and I think I think that's something very important to understand from where the company stand in terms of its product. We just not in the community in building a community, because we think it's a very hard thing to do, especially in China. Because if you look at the traffic of China, right, whether it's travel or non-travel, everything is owned by the BAT, right, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent. To some extent, one of the co-founders of Tencent is an early investor in us, but it's actually very, very hard to build a social community nowadays in China because everything is already controlled by them. And you look at even like Breadtrip or Chongyou, right? They are owned by Alibaba. So you have the dad feeding traffic to a kid, and the kid can then grow. How hard? It's just very hard to do that. And that's right now that's what we've been focusing on.
Yeah, and just one more thing is like. I think you did a pretty good job actually with WeChat, and you build a kind of community. I went through your account, you have like a professional account, and you have followers, like you have for each article, you have more than 1,000 readers.
Yes. Well, that one is to mainly engage customers. Like I would have to say, in China right now, there's different phases of growth. There's a few big companies that actually grew because of Weibo, right? Because Weibo just grew for the past in the past decade. And then there was a few companies that grew with WeChat. By now, I would have to say WeChat for us and for a lot of companies is just to engage your existing customer base. It's actually very hard now to gain new customers through your WeChat account or WeChat moments. I think for us right now internally, our China team, what we're looking at is, are there other upcoming platforms that will potentially be the next WeChat, the next Weibo that can bring you but you can grow with them and be able to grab that market. And if you remember, we're currently looking at is called Zhihu. Zhihu is the Quora of China. They are actually kind of inventing themselves, so that's one of the platforms that we're actually working very closely with. But that is mainly, I guess, China, I would have to say, because China is different animal.
Thank you for your question, and Eric,
Thank
please
you.
be seated. Amanda, do you know what's the most important for the 3 startups we have today?
Yes, it is internet. So we are very honored to have our next speaker from HKBN, the Hong Kong Broadband Network. Hong Kong is ranked among the top in the world for its speed of internet. In this regard, we are very happy to have one of the top broadband service providers, HKBN, to be one of our speakers today. HKBN is the largest provider of fiber high-speed residential broadband service in Hong Kong. Today, it covers over 11,000 Wi-Fi hotspots throughout Hong Kong.
Yes, today we have the Chief Technology Officer of Hong Kong Broadband Network, Mr. Gary McLaren. Gary is currently leading HKBN's technology development to expand the range of innovative broadband products and services delivered to customers. Now, Gary, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I think I'm the oldest guy on stage today by a long shot. Fantastic. Was it 15 years ago you said you finished university? Well, for me, it's double that. 30 years ago, I graduated in Melbourne. I've got my 30-year reunion with a whole bunch of friends coming up just next month, heading back to Melbourne. So it's good to be here back at the university, looking at what's changed over those 30 years. And I'll be talking a little bit today about my thoughts over that 30-year journey. A lot has changed, but I think the principles are still very much the same for what happens with innovation and technology, as I see there. I won't be talking too much about Hong Kong broadband itself. I'm only 3 months into this role here in Hong Kong. So new to the company, new to the city. All of you are Hong Kong broadband customers, I assume, so I don't have to talk too much. Hands up, anyone that isn't? No hands have gone up? Good, good to see. So yeah, I'll be really talking more about what I see. I've been through a number of roles in bigger companies and smaller companies, and the changes and the key principles around technology innovation. And I'm sure if there are questions about Hong Kong broadband, I'd like to help you as well. Let's talk about innovation. I think innovation is one of the hardest things to actually put your finger on. What is it? We hear a lot of people talking about it, trying to define it, trying to understand it. And look, I'm probably not going to get there and solve that today either, but it really is something we should spend some time really thinking and looking at in many, many ways. And what I really first wanted to take back to, and I hope that's the word, is what was innovation looking like 30 years ago? This video, yeah.
State-of-the-art technology for you, today, for tomorrow. Our telecommunication technology turns your phone into a computer terminal. With speech service and other integrated services, such as the Follow Me service, wake-up call service, pre-programmed at your phone terminal, and owing to our cellular radio technique, to and from your car. But without your car as well. Our system also covers services such as teletext, videotechs, and can also provide a nationwide network overview. You've seen only a few samples of today's telecommunication services with AXE, the heart of our system. Just imagine what is possible in a completely integrated service digital network.
Amazing, isn't it? That was 1985. I actually was working, not so much with Ericsson at the time, but very similar industry. And what amazes me when I stumbled across that video not too long ago was how really the principles and ideas of what we now take for granted were all there. We were looking for mobility with phones. We were looking at, it really intrigues me, that wake-up call. What's the first thing all of us now touch when we wake up? It's our phone. And there we were 30 years ago. Well, people were thinking about what people wanted and actually had those ideas quite clearly. Even though the technology was very basic and rudimentary, they had those ideas and the concepts were there. We saw the four precursors to today's internet with video text, bulletin boards, those sorts of tools. So it's amazing what has happened over that time, and I'll probably just quickly go through some of the innovations and experiences that I've been through. The first technology that I worked on was something called the Integrated Services Digital Network. It's a great name, isn't it? It's catchy. It's called ISDN for short. We thought at the time that that was going to take over the world and essentially be the digital technology that we would all be using here 30 years later. And to be honest, it was a fair failure. It didn't actually do too much in terms of changing people's lives because it was really technology looking for a problem. We had a bunch of engineers working in large companies, in usually very much government-run telecommunications companies that were looking to play with some new toys, but could not really bring it to market. And I think what that highlighted to me very early on was competition. If it's not there, it's not driving change, it's unlikely that you're going to come up with a solution that will actually take off in the market. It's that constant threat, the constant tension that comes from competition, the constant need to innovate and change that drives the innovation to a point that it can actually scale and create new opportunities. The second line there was some work I did in a startup. Believe it or not, back 15 years ago, most of the startups around the world were actually telcos, even though they're now very conservative type of companies. With the opening up of the telecommunications industry, which was a very boring utility, into a more competitive and dynamic industry back in the 1990s, we actually saw broadband become a technology that actually created a new world we have today with access to the internet. At that time I was working on ADSL, some of it's still around to Hong Kong, I believe. Maybe David, you still on ADSL? Yeah, see, you're living in the wrong area. So it is, it was an example back then. I actually worked in a startup, what was called at the time a CLEC, a competitive local exchange carrier, another great acronym from the past. And we took on the big incumbent telco in Australia called Telstra, and created a great business. It was probably one of the most fond experiences I had in my career, where over 4 years we grew a business to 50 million Australian dollars and sold it for a profit after the tech wreck. So this wasn't all driven by the tech wreck of the late 1990s. It was done and was successful right through it. It was a very, very great experience for me, and really gave me the opportunity to see how a startup culture and a teaming culture in a business environment is so different to those bigger, larger companies that I've worked in earlier, like Siemens and Telstra. I went on to then and worked as a co-founder of a mobile payments company. I really got the startup bug, and we created a mobile payments application before the smartphone was even dreamt of. So it was all based on SMS, became very popular in the Philippines. Globe Telecom took it to market, and we took it then all around the region as a new way to bring mobile payments to all those people without bank accounts. Still a very popular service. It's now very widely used in South America and in Africa as well, but its roots were here in Southeast Asia. And we ran that from Melbourne, moved it up to Singapore, and I spent a bit of time in Singapore as we scaled that business and drove it to what I think was a really great outcome over a period of about 10 years. And I'm lucky enough to sell it and make a bit of money on the way, which was very, very useful, obviously. But the last few years, I've been back into the broadband world. It's funny how telecommunications has been sort of the key thread through my career. And again, it's about what broadband is doing now with fibre optics into all of our homes and all of the different businesses, and into the future with the Internet of Things. It's going to continue to be the core backstop of all of the networking and businesses and opportunities going forward. So they were very exciting times, all of those startups. I'm lucky enough, and I think to have been through 3 out of 4 that have been very, very successful. And that to me is a sign of what people need to expect. Not everyone's going to have a successful startup. It'll take time and time again. What does that really tell me when I think back at those times? It's not about the good ideas. At the essence, as we saw in the video, 30 years ago, the ideas were there about what people needed and would look to buy. As we talked about, mobility, computer networking, video text as the forerunner for the internet. What is important comes down to user experience, and bad experience as a user makes sure that technology or that startup won't work. We've all had experiences, particularly I think many of us who have been early adopters and have loved tech have seen and been frustrated at what we've seen with Microsoft, Windows, earlier mobile phones, slow internet. So we've all driven through those technology barriers and persisted, but it's only as technology has improved that we've actually seen the user experience get better. And there's probably 3 main drivers, as we all know, that is driving that technology experience. And this is where the core of our future innovation is still a technology underpinning. First one was back into engineering sort of terminology, Kreider's law. People might have heard of that. It's about how, just like the other one there, hard disk capacity has been growing exponentially over the last 30 years and has driven to the stage now where obviously we can get terabytes of data into not only hard disks but into solid state media, and has created the opportunity to store the huge amounts of data that our society now generates, whether it's from photos to sensor data. We have data at the centre of everything that we're doing in our lives. The other one is the more famous Moore's law. It continues to astound me how the power of the semiconductor and the number of transistors that can be put into practice can drive compute power at such a huge rate. And we're seeing the combination of these now actually in data centres and cloud computing. So that technology has driven the user experience we have today. the smartphone that we all have now would not be possible without these two drivers going forward. And then probably even more powerful, and this is where the real value comes in, the real user experience is Metcalfe's law. The value of any service expands by the square of the number of people who are connected. If it wasn't for these principles, we would not have success of Uber, all of the different sharing, social networking technologies. Here it's a dumb old telephone that illustrates the value that increases so quickly when you get more and more users onto our network. But all of the innovation that we're actually seeing driven off the back of the technologies is still coming down to these fundamental laws that will continue to drive the fundamentals of innovation, in my view. Anyway. One of the early things I learnt was back in that startup in about 1999 that a chairman we had on the board sat down and educated us on was this whole concept of product market fit. Now many of you will probably have seen this and heard about this, but I truly believe this is key to any successful technology and startup. It's only when these two concepts come together that you can really create the value. And it starts about, every startup, every new business model needs to think about this as its real destiny, that's looking to a destination, it's looking to find. It starts with that minimum viable product. It's not going to get anywhere until you can actually touch and feel and create a product that has a chance to resonate in the market and test what the market is looking for. So that minimal viable product is fundamental. You need to then have the persistence and patience to go through a development curve where you'll get a lot of feedback, a lot of people will be excited, some people will be negative, but you'll actually probably get enough users on board that will see you getting to a curve like you can see up there, where over a few years you're getting some business, but then all of a sudden it'll stop. Growth will be hard to achieve. You'll feel as though you've flamed out too early, but persistence is fundamental to what needs to be done to drive through the chasm and onto further heights and scalability. And at the end of the day, after a lot of work, you'll sit back and you'll be lucky enough, hopefully, to see that the product you've developed has found a market that fits the need, solves the problems that will enable the business to grow, the opportunity to grow a company, to grow a business, which I think is one of the most exciting and valuable things in anyone's career. And then you'll be able to see, obviously the rewards that come from that. So it's worth every bit of your time and effort to spend working in these environments, learning about how different startups have tackled these problems. It's great to hear the journeys that Asif and Eric and Lewis have been on, and probably been on a couple of times already. And I know it's a very valuable experience that I'm glad I'm hopefully able to share with you my experience here today as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And now it's the Q&A section. If you've got any questions, please raise up your hand.
We have one after that.
Because a few days ago, I actually called HKBN, I'm a user of HKBN, I got educated into, I wanted to try to set a IPv6 tunnel myself. So I got educated in, but they told me they don't understand, and they asked me to.
Sorry, I missed. You tried to
set a IPv6 tunnel.
Oh, IPv6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I caught the education hotline, but the staff just told me to understand what I'm talking about. And yeah, and I checked later. It seems that education ran out and supports the ICMP protocol. So, but right now it's like there is a trend for like the Internet of Things.
No,
right now. Yeah, but in order to use that, IPv6 is like a necessity. So I don't know, it's like how ready. Like maybe education or maybe Hong Kong is ready for this Internet of Things.
Yeah, it's a good question. The Internet of Things, I think, is a very exciting opportunity for HKBN. What you mentioned there technically on the IP version 6 is something we are, and I've got my team looking at how we transition and open up our ability to use IPv6 to create a network that will be able to address many millions of more devices than we currently have. It is a complex transition that many telcos are trying to tackle at the moment. But it's interesting that one of the fundamental drivers that's actually causing us to take this more seriously is the cost of the older IPv4 addresses are starting to escalate because they're running out. The whole planet has now nearly exhausted the number of addresses. So we're actually seeing market forces driving costs of those addresses up and forcing telcos like ourselves to take on find new ways to bring IPv6 to market. And what you mentioned there as the other reason is to open up new market opportunities, because it's only with IPv6 that we'll be able to address those new devices. What I think though is an interesting challenge for Hong Kong is how the Internet of Things can play out to make the city a smarter city. We hear a lot about smart cities around the world. Most of them are driven by government, looking to create opportunities to better infrastructure, better transport, better health, other services that are normally very much government dominated. But Hong Kong probably hasn't really got that driver. So it really is going to come back to the private companies in the market to find ways to promote and drive the Internet of Things, smarter cities and these sorts of services. So I am looking and working with some other people to see how we can create those sort of opportunities for Hong Kong. Because it's going to, I think, have to be done a little bit differently than, say, Singapore, where government is very much more of a driver for this. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to be difficult in Hong Kong, it's just going to have to be different. So it's an exciting opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. So, fellow audience, if you've got any more questions, you can put it into the Q&A platform, and maybe it will become the next topic for our panel discussion. Gary, please remain on the stage. Now, we are having our next very exciting section, the panel discussion. As Asif couldn't join us in the panel discussion, may we invite the other two guest speakers, Eric and also Louis, to come onto the stage. And may we also invite David and Dr. Ray, please also come up. To facilitate this section, I would like to invite my co-facilitator, Naomi, to come onto the stage. Naomi, please.
So, hi all, I'm Naomi. I've graduate associate from DBS as well. So welcome to our panel discussion. As I recall, our theme today is Smart Living with Technology. So our focus is how technology and innovation connect with people. So you may feel free to express your views on this. So, but to start with, we all watched the Apple Live event a few days ago. There are some new amazing features with the products. One of the features that I like is iPhone 6s. They now have the 3D touch, which I'm so amazed about it. So Amanda, do you watch the live event?
Yes, of course I did. Because personally, I like taking pictures very much, and now I'm really excited about its new features of live photo, and also they raise the quality of pictures into
Okay, Amanda, you're talking too much. So you're not our speakers today. So let's see what our guests think about it. So our first topic will be around what's your favorite app or gadget that have effectively enhanced your daily life. So David, you may start our panel discussion.
Well, I think I was asked a similar question last time. The answer I gave was Google Now. We got lots of different answers to that. All I'll talk about, I think, what my feelings of Google Now have continued to evolve, and it just keeps getting better and smarter and more predictive. It does require an element of willingness to share information. And I very much see it as one of those services that just gets better every time you use it. As much as I am an Apple fan, and I'm also a Samsung fan, they're a great sponsor of ours in the Vault as well. I didn't stay up to 1 in the morning. I chose sleep this time, but I did read all the tech blogs. I think 3D Touch is a pretty interesting new feature that's coming into the phone, and I think that's one of the great things that Apple does. They're not often the real inventor of some of this technology, but they're really able to embed it and build great user experience. And I think that was a great theme that we saw from the speakers today. I think every one of our startups has really spoken about the importance of user experience. And I loved Eric's talk about getting details right. That's something we talk about a lot in the bank. So I took a photo and made sure the team really pay attention to that.
Thank you so much, David. I also learned a lot from all the speakers today, tremendously. And regarding the same question, like last year I was talking about Siri, but this year I actually want to highlight several things. So the first one is, obviously at the Apps Lab, I would love the app that developed by my students. And we are actually launching a couple of apps on campus. Yeah, you can imagine at university we have so many student activities. And all these apps can actually be developed by our students. And if they are able to acquire the skill set, and they can actually carry this skill set to the market. And I think just follow our Apps Lab page and you will know what we can create. But coming back to the same question again, one of my recent observations for the apps market is an app called Sing, S-I-N-G. Have you heard about this app before? It's actually from the company called Smil. And it's using to play pianos. And previous form is playing piano, but now today you can imagine with this community, you can sing with a singer, like in Australia, and I'm in Hong Kong. I can sing with him. And according to the McAfee law, with more people involved in this community, you create a lot more new value to it. And I really see that is kind of cool, and is a disruptive innovation to the karaoke industry. And I would say there are just so many different cool ideas coming out, and as I mentioned in the video, student innovation can actually create a lot of new values. Thank you.
Yeah, regarding one of the app that has really changed or has influenced my life or impacted my life, I would definitely say WeChat. I think WeChat kind of penetration in Hong Kong is not that high. So that's why anytime I'm working with a lot of people nowadays in the business world, I actually a lot of time convince them like, can we switch from WhatsApp to WeChat? One of the main reasons why I give them is because it's actually very easy to use on desktop. You can crop images, you can mark it up, you can just send it through, you can drop files into it, and you can save it on your phone, you can open it on your phone. I think that is something really great that you were able to connect a personal and the business together. I think what's lacking right now in the WeChat outside of China is all the services that's being offered within the WeChat space. Personally, if I were an investor, I would totally continue to support Tencent and this WeChat platform. Because if you look at Taobao or Tmall, it's basically a Google, but is actually just move Google onto Tmall. Because nowadays in China, when people have to search for products that they want to buy, they don't buy Google. They go to Tmall to how about it, right? Well, that's what I call them. And I think now that, like I mentioned earlier, everything's changing to mobile. And to some extent, I think Alibaba or Tmall or Taobao is having a little hard time right now shifting from desktop to mobile. And WeChat has already owned that space. You know, in the space of e-commerce, you find that a lot of businesses nowadays, to some extent, are skipping making the app because you can now integrate your app into the WeChat, and all the businesses, all the purchases can, in the future, happen within the WeChat app. So I think there's a lot of opportunity with WeChat. I think there's, and this has really impacted my life from personal to business. Thank you.
So obviously the device that's changed my life the most is smartphone. I'm an Apple fan. Can't go anywhere without the iPhone. Interesting to see though in the Apple launch event the new push into the iPad, larger screen, trying to compete with the Microsoft Surface. So it's clear that there's a change and competition driving some innovation there from Apple into an unexpected direction for me. I didn't think they would head in that direction. What app? From a productivity perspective in our work, I'm introducing an app or a system called Slack into our development environments, and that is a very interesting tool that is really, I'm finding, and it's something new for me, it's also new for my team, how we can work in a more agile, dynamic way with the teams to deliver some really new changes, products and services extremely quickly. And it's just a great tool that saves us so much time. We don't have to spend time in meetings, keeping everyone up to date. It's from IT, engineering, development teams, wherever they're located, we're finding a very, very good tool. Personally, my favourite app is Flipboard. I'm a bit of a news junkie, and reading through Flipboard just is what I do, and passing time away. And I found it just a great app for my own personal use.
I'm going to follow the same bandwagon. I was going to say my favorite product right now is very much Slack. And the way I characterize it is that were it not for Gmail, email would have died a long time ago and would have been replaced by Slack. So Gmail has just been able to delay that, but the chat is back, and it's a very, very good way to communicate and quickly get things done. So I'm a big fan of Slack. I encourage everyone here to go and get a Slack account. It's wonderful. Besides that, the other thing that I like for productivity, and that's just related to our work, is the suite of on-demand logistics applications that are emerging. Hong Kong is a hotspot for those. So we have GoGoVan, EasyVan, Uber Van specifically. As part of what we do, we need to link up households with a network of transport providers. We're not trying to run a fleet of vehicles to move things. So that means that we need protocols, effectively, just like you have for information, moving them through standard protocols, to move goods through standard protocols. And these on-demand transport applications are allowing us to do that. It would not be possible for us to exist otherwise.
Dr. Ray, you got something to share?
Yes, because when I heard of Eric's app, which is the WhatsApp, I want to announce that the apps that we are working on a very interesting project called Echo. And the idea is an add-on to the WhatsApp. And imagine you type a Chinese message to the WhatsApp, and the app itself will automatically translate to the other language by itself. And then if you type like a hashtag image David Lynch, and then you will automatically search online from the internet, find your image, and post to the WhatsApp group. That's another feature. And there's another feature, very interesting, is imagine tonight we have a chat group, 20 people, we want to count how many people going to the dinner tonight. It's very difficult to count, right, in the chat group. So with the add-on, you will be able to type a hashtag and say, I'm go, and then you type vote, and then you will find out you have a list who's going tonight. That kind of thing is what we call the smart intelligence to the WhatsApp itself. We are not inventing a new WhatsApp, but we are adding that kind of features to it. And it's actually coming out from the Apps Lab. And also today we also have a lot of university, call it like Draco. It's from the residence office. It's also working with us for some interesting projects as well. Thank you so much.
It's quite an interesting project to work on. And I also do agree with Eric that maybe the WeChat in Hong Kong, the penetration is not so high. So maybe I also think that WeChat is not now only bounded to communication tool. It is also a platform to discuss. We can see the update or see the other friends update on WeChat platform. And then regarding this, so how do you think? Okay, thank you. And maybe regarding this kind of platform or communication tools, so how do you think about this kind of communication tools, how to incorporate into your business to enhance your business?
Maybe I'll go. I mean, I'm slightly jealous of some of the startups talking about Slack. You know, we're doing some investigation on some of these kind of tools, and you know, we have a few restrictions being a bank on certain things we can do in the cloud, so that's an ongoing challenge for us. But looking at that, I can assure you, email is very much alive and well inside banks. And interestingly, we're kind of back on BlackBerry now too, with the acquisition of Good by BlackBerry. So that's an interesting turn of events as well. Some of the technology that you showed, Gary, I wouldn't say brings back memories. You know, when you get right into the back of banks, you still see some of those things that were in that video, faxes and these kind of things. But that's one of the paradoxes at the moment. You see these contrasts in banking. We've got one part of the bank that is extremely edgy and innovative, and then you've still got the reality of all the legacy that we're trying to deal with, and then you've got the outside world, you know, with the fintech startups that are creating these really interesting new business models. And banking is, in a way, is going through what the telco industry went through, but very clear, we need to change the way we communicate, embrace messaging, and we're looking at ways to do that. Probably the startups are going to move a little bit quickly, or a little bit faster than what we can at the moment.
I agree. Having a community like the Apps Lab, we have over 500 members, and if we organize event, we need to announce to the people. So what we really face is how do we actually get in touch with the member, the student, and also tell them this is the event that they want to know. If you look at the poster at the back, at the CAL, we've got 3 stages. So some students, they would love to contribute in the coding event. Some students, they want to contribute in the project event. And some students want to join today the innovation entrepreneurship event. So how to actually reach the student with their own interest? And this is our challenge. And we believe customization is one key thing that we are implementing for it. For example, we have the membership app, and we implement the reward system. So we want our students to have different levels. So this kind of thing is what we call the enhancement to facilitate faster communication that we are actually doing. Yeah.
For us, I mean, if we have to go back to say WeChat and us, I think the reason we're also growing WeChat is just because it's becoming a platform. So like say with WhatsApp or I guess Facebook Messenger, even though Facebook Messenger is actually moving towards that way. So say WeChat, they are launching WeChat Pay in Hong Kong very soon. So we will be one of the early adopters in the WeChat payment system. Within the WeChat, you can create different official accounts. So we do have official accounts. We actually have a dedicated support team answering questions from people in China who nowadays just use that official account to ask questions like, oh, I want to go to, say, Bali next week, what can I book and so forth. So we do have a team supporting just that. And I think WeChat also just has launched it this few days ago, selling mooncakes through the WeChat account. I think that's the first product. These are things that we'll be very soon experimenting in as well. Yeah, you can use it. No, I didn't like experimenting our products.
Maybe one of the tools that I've found very useful back in Australia and also here is Meetup. Just being able to have a tool that still brings people together is still very, very important, and then getting people from diverse backgrounds. In Australia, I was part of the Telecommunication Society there, which had a lot of older engineers, and actually taking them through a journey and organising their monthly lecture series through a more modern approach approach like Meetup proved to be very, very successful, because all of a sudden we could bring a whole new generation of people into that group and into that sharing of knowledge and experience. So we probably should also think about how these tools can help still do the more traditional gatherings, like these gatherings, and I found Meetup to be a really good tool. Even here in Hong Kong, I've started to use it just to see what's going on in different places, and you shouldn't forget the value of networking, and just whether it's a startup or in a career or anything else, it's a very important skill to have, and you've got to push yourself to go out and meet as many people, so it's not all about the virtual world.
So, I mean, just speaking of our experience when dealing with clients, what we found that works, I mean, as Eric said, internet is mobile. So in Hong Kong, WhatsApp has been the best means of communication with all of our clients anytime that we have to communicate directly with clients, or otherwise our application. I think what's interesting when you look at the way applications are moving in terms of networking communication. We've had this paradigm for the past maybe 10 years, whereby being online was all about talking, communicating, exchanging information purely digitally, and both what Eric is doing and what Gary has mentioned is something to do with linking information and network to actual activities offline, and I think this is something that will probably become a big sector for evolution around what it means to do social, whereby instead of just continuing to alienate ourselves from one another, we'll start looking at using social to actually do things together offline. And Meetup is one of the best examples for that, but I can imagine that what Klook is doing can have a lot to do with that. You know, share your travel experience with your friends or organize them online. Yeah, so I think that's what interests me in terms of communication and social media, to actually be able to use that, not just to continuously see a live feed of updates, but actually be able to use it as a tool to see my friends in real life.
Here I got a question from the audience directing to Eric, and the question is, what enables a club to provide discounts of activities even though there is maybe few people applying for the ticket?
Well, it's actually very interesting. The activities market is actually a very traditional sector, whereby if you think about when you go to a destination and try to book an experience, that experience is actually likely you're not booking direct. It's actually, let's say, the operator will be selling to a wholesaler. That wholesaler is probably talking to that hotel concierge that you're talking to, so whereby it has completely marked up. So for our advantage is, and that is why we launched Destination by Destinations, is we actually connect with the operator directly. So to some extent, we are just removing the middleman the middleman who is sucking up a lot of the profit and passing them back that profit as savings to the customers. So we are not a group buy website whereby you have to group buy to get those kind of discounts.
So there's another question from the crowds to Louis. So it's saying that what kinds of technology enables you to provide 24-hour security of physical goods?
Well, that's very straightforward. That's actually just an external protocol of security cameras that link up with security firms. It's not something that we developed, it's just something that we bought off the shelf. Very, very simple. Besides that, I think going forward will be in implementing a set of monitoring stations in all of our facilities whereby users can directly check conditions in which their belongings are being held. But it's very simple to do.
So I would like to ask about, apart from the advantages that brought to your business with different apps or gadgets, so are there any challenges or any barriers when you're implementing these technological ideas to your business? For example, some public acceptance. Do they like your app, or is it acceptable, or is it popular enough, or anything you do to attack the problem to make more people to use your app or anything?
Yeah, I think adoption of a new way of consuming or habit is actually very hard. For us, for example, I mean, now telling you is like, hey, you don't need to go to Airport Express to buy that ticket, or no need to talk to that hotel concierge because the hotel concierge is probably overcharging you. It takes a lot of time to do that. We rely a lot on, I guess, one is word of mouth, social media, and what for sure is definitely partners. And when we do this business, even though we are technology, we're digital, we sometimes try to think outside the boxes, whereby digital to acquire a user nowadays in a digital world is actually quite expensive. Because especially in China or even in the States, right? Because you have major players already there that's controlling the traffic. We actually like partnering up with relatively traditional companies because, first of all, they actually have their users. Every day, a retail store on the street has traffic, right? How do you leverage that traffic and bring it onto your platform? Because your platform is cross-country, right? You can do anything on it. You can cross-sell stuff. So we've been working with a lot of partners to kind of get the word out there, and especially actually traditional partners, rather than like digital. Do we have to always work with Uber to work with that? If you were trying to work with Uber, they're actually a hard company to work with because they will look at, oh, this is my users worth money. But if you talk to traditional companies, we don't look at it that way. And to us, it's actually beneficial to work together, essentially.
I think this is in a sense the paradox of trying to work in anything that involves a degree of innovation, whereby you start working towards an idea and you want the public to give you a response on that idea. Is there a value? Is there not a value? And carving a value proposition that resonates is the crucial element, the most difficult part in a sense, and particularly so when you're coming with something that requires a different behavior. As Eric mentioned, people buying their tickets on their phone for the Airport Express. In our case, people becoming familiar with the idea of keeping the things that I don't need too often off-site. The paradox that comes with that is that as you start developing one new set of ideas that lead to different, a non-usual, non-standard behavior, you start getting another bunch of them, right? So you continue to want to develop product, and each of those steps of product development mean that you get potentially the user further and further away from what he's being used to, and that's in a sense dangerous for startups. So you really need to make sure that you tackle, in a sense, one problem at a time as much as possible, and that you really listen to people, not so much to learn only how to make the product valuable to them, but also to understand how to present the value, because the way you present the value does matter. So I will give you our example at Spacebox. When I started the company, it was very clear that I did not want to sell storage to people. I was absolutely not interested in selling storage to people. I wanted to give them a tool to access things online, to get more space at home, to get organized. Storage was only a means to an end. But when I tried to present this to people in this way, I couldn't make myself understood. So I had to step back and explain this is an enhanced storage system. And after the initial users, I've then been able to go back to my original idea, which was to provide a tool that helps you to get organized, that helps you to get a better home. And now that's working. But the way you present even the same product and the way you approach value has to be somewhat flexible.
I'll just add, from a traditional enterprise, back in 2007, I think when the first iPhone came out, I was guilty myself of thinking that winning in mobile was about having as many apps as you could. And actually, some banks did a pretty good job of that. We've still got a lot of apps, but biggest challenge these days is actually getting usage and user engagement. And I think we're starting to enter into a world that is moving beyond apps. So being able to deliver the right information at the right time through services that are contextual and relevant, in many use cases is far more important than having the most beautifully designed app. And that's a big challenge that we've got in the bank at the moment. The reason why I love things like Google Now or Siri, they're effectively overlays. You can build as much complexity as you want to, but behind that layer, without cluttering the interface and without making it more complicated. Actually, as you add complexity, it makes the experience better because the front end remains the same. So that's quite a big challenge for us in the bank. We've got some apps that are very heavily used. We've got others that are hardly used at all. And they have a shelf life. So I think our challenge with the apps is quite similar to Spacebox, actually. You've got a set of apps that are on your first or second screen that you use quite regularly. For me, at least, there's a whole bunch of stuff in the middle that I hardly ever use, and then you've got some new things that sit on the last screen that might be the thing of the day, and you might try them out and see whether they're useful.
From that perspective, actually, when we started, we were very clear, let's not do anything native, because there definitely is a problem with app fatigue. If you want people to adopt something and you're asking them to go through the step of downloading yet another app and they have 200 on their phones already, you're putting a really big hurdle in front of people. For early penetration and testing, I'm a big believer in web. Web apps have big downsides from a lot of perspectives, but they have the upside of allowing you very fast iteration, very quick possibility of testing very fast if your product has legs, and yeah, you just avoid the App Store, which is great.
Dr. Ray?
Yes. Oh, there first. Yeah, probably a little bit like David. The telco industry has obviously all generations, all segments covered, and I think we're seeing even in our stores the majority of the traffic are there just to pay a bill. So we user experience and getting people to change their experience, because we would obviously much prefer to pay that bill online. It's been cheaper for us. We could use the stores for demonstrating our products and services, but our staff are busy transacting. And so we have a lot of conservatism that we need to continue to work away at, and it goes back to that earlier theme about improving the user experience to make it accessible. The new devices and we have with tablets and phones are great. My mother-in-law now pays her bill back in Australia online, which is a great hope for us all. I think that we can see this happening going forward. But yeah, we're still getting even signing up new customers to our service. It's only probably 20 to 30% that actually come through totally online, which may be surprising to a lot of people here, but that's the reality that we deal with. And we look to, the only way we can make that better is to make it a better user experience and a lot of guidance along the way.
But it's amazing, you know, one of the feedback that we get fairly often from people is that when they look at our work and what we're doing with with our site and with our web application, some people ask us or issue criticism in the veiled form of, oh, but the user experience is not bad enough, because we actually do get people that look at the site that we build and the way we set up our application, and it doesn't look Hong Kong enough, right? There's not enough crap on it everywhere. So it's in a sense it's fascinating for me to hear from people that we're so used to having bad product, let's have more of it, right? And it's also interesting to notice, for example, like in the banking sector, checks are predominant in Hong Kong as a form of payment. It's very bizarre. It's something that's hard to explain.
Yeah, I thought I'd left my checkbook in Australia and I wouldn't need one ever again, but maybe we do.
Everyone's smiling. I was saying, I can see my team smiling. We talk about checks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. User experience is so important. I also want to highlight one important word. Could be before time or ahead of time. When, like a crew, when you provide service, you know the people at what designated time, at what location this guy will appear. And before the time, you can actually create a lot of new value and service to this type of people. And I think this is really amazing and lots of new things can be done.
There is one more question from the audience, and it's talking about big data. And would you mind share some of the statistics, or what's your plan next for making use of the big data on your business?
Maybe I can kick that one off. Clearly, in a telco environment, we have lots of data. In many cases, too much to manage. One of the areas I'm most looking to see where we can help with big data, it goes back to the Internet of Things, the whole opportunity with the sensors that will be needed around our cities and our environment to make these places, our cities, a better place to live. I really look at that opportunity as a great one for our telecommunications industry. But we've still got to remember that we are probably going to be the experts in big data. It will be us partnering with other companies that will be innovative, entrepreneurial, and we can provide that underlying infrastructure. We're not necessarily going to be employing a whole range of data scientists to exploit some of the information, but we'd love to partner with those innovative companies to bring new services to market. Wi-Fi is a classic example maybe that I've been just thinking about more lately is we struggle in our industry to work out what the business model is to roll out public Wi-Fi. I'm sure people would love us to roll out more, but the expectation is it doesn't cost anything for anyone to use. So the business model is very difficult for us to prove in to go and spend money to roll out more and more Wi-Fi networks. The potential business model is to really take the data we collect from the people that are using those Wi-Fi networks and then present that back to the businesses where those Wi-Fi hotspots are located, or whether it's shopping centres or amusement parks and everything else, to really try and look for monetisation angles with the people who can analyse that data and present that value back. Because I think that would be huge value for those organisations to get more. So it's not so much what's happening online, but it's actually what's happening physically in your environment. You'll be able to track with what people are doing with their Wi-Fi in their use in a shopping centre. So I think the opportunities we've got to think a lot differently about, and we'll have to work with partners to create those new models that will fund better networks that we'll all enjoy. But there is a question of privacy and user acceptance in that as well. So it is obviously we have a challenge to get that user acceptance and user experience right in that area as well.
And for us, right now we're focused on a product that doesn't necessarily require anything with regards to using too much data or capturing too much data when you look at the base existing product. But as I said, for us this idea of Spacebook was always a means to an end. It was a way to free up your home and keep the things you don't need online. And right now what that means is that you put your own belongings in Spacebooks and they're available digitally. And what we always thought was that if we start seeing patterns of use or items that people systemically recall at different time points or different time periods, then what we can potentially start trying to do is supplying things to our users that are not necessarily things that they put away. We just provide them for rental basis or sharing basis. And the reason why I'm interested in this, and this would definitely be driven by observing behavior and data, is because when our early users started giving us interesting feedback around having their things online. They told us very clearly that they felt very good being able to go online and see an image of something that's theirs. It's not their own, but they have it on their tablet or on their mobile. They feel good. They feel like it's there. It's accessible. And when you look at a lot of the platforms that currently exist to access goods on demand, basically the peer-to-peer sharing rental networks, one of the big challenges that they face is that there is a level of awkwardness. People look at this inventory of things and they know very clearly that it's someone else's. So they feel very awkward about tapping it in a sense. And we do away with that because we start from the proposition of put your own personal belongings off-site and available online, and that probably makes it a bit easier for us to then supply you other things on your Spacebox account. So obviously this is not what we're building right now, but it's what we have in mind. So in a sense it's surprising because you look at what we do, and if you give it a superficial look, it's a storage system. What does big data have to do with that? But there are things that are interesting throughout.
Yeah, I think big data for us, I wouldn't call it big for now, but we have started looking at data because we have reached to a certain, I wouldn't say critical mass, but we like the website right now monthly is close to like 200,000 unique visits. So from there we're already able to gather some of the data of the consumers that's coming to us, and then there's an app that's opening as well. Through that, I think it's very interesting in the travel market in terms of, because you can identify that this person, say, if they book this name, then they are very family oriented. So we know that they have kids and things, and we know how many kids they have technically. And then if it was a couple that booked like a diving experience, all these data actually is being compiled, and we're noticing that there's an interesting pattern, as in like if they actually use a lot as a couple, they will always come back as a couple, and then when they come to us, they will ask us questions, for example, what kind of hotel would you recommend? Even though we don't do hotels. So these are the data points that we're gathering for which that so that we will be able to launch in other verticals, other than just activities. And when we launch into the other verticals, we can even more accurately, because when we started activities and they came to us, it was basically a blank paper, right? We don't know what they like. But now the next thing that we will launch, which you think about it in the destination travel space, activities is really just one part, right? There's Vice Hotel, and there's actually more. There's dining, there's shopping, there's car rental, there's a lot of things. With these big data accumulating by using one vertical right now, we can extrapolate that and understand what they will be interested in the other areas and to be accurately target them. So that's kind of thing that we're doing.
Yes, talking about big data, I have 3 things I want to share. The first one is we work on a project with the Hong Kong Chiropractic Doctors Association, and we developed the app with 1 second. You can take 2 images of a person, and then you know whether the spine is up straight or not. We collect some data. I don't think it's a big data. We collect some data, but eventually this data will turn into some useful assets, and that can help the doctor to analyze what kind of patient, what is the population, that kind of problem. And we develop small application like this, and we collect lots of data. This is one showcase. And the other case is, I think, also related to the event today. We develop apps for the whole campus, and imagine the student today. How many of you are actually students here today? Yes, some of you, yes. So you can see they attend the event today, and later on they want to find out which event they have attended. So we, just using the single app, the app will actually provide a service called resume CV generation. So they can actually log down all of the events that you attend on campus, and by the time when you graduate, you generate your CV in PDF, and that can send to your employer. And we have that kind of data, I would say, very useful and create new value to the student before they graduate. So we are actually doing this. And talking about the third point is our program, which is called the Computer Engineering Program, and I'm the Associate Director of it. And we are changing the programming to data engineering. So we are, on the university level, we are also working along this line, and we believe there are a lot more things to be done.
Yeah, I think from a traditional bank perspective, obviously we've got masses and masses of data. We also have a lot of security and privacy challenges that every bank faces, but we don't make particularly good use of that data. We've been focusing a lot in the last couple of years about cognitive computing and starting to look at technologies that got the ability to ingest masses of data. So, you know, it's quite public the work we've been doing with IBM's Watson as a wealth advisor. But a lot of other use cases. I think one of the areas that I'm most passionate about in the bank is using big data to give better service to customers. I think one of the dangers in the financial industry is often when people think about big data, customers start to think about banks, you know, trying to force more products on them or things that they don't really need. The area that we're getting really obsessive about is customer service, and how do we solve the customer's problem in a more proactive manner, in a more predictive way. How do we make our CRM systems more intelligent, so they're not just repositories, but we can use all the signals that we've got, sift out the noise and deliver information in a more predictive way. So we've got some pretty exciting things happening on that. Doing a lot of small data as well. So just, you know, get the hygiene of getting our data cleansed. We've got a big core banking project going on at the moment. And really changing the way we visualize data. So we've been using a tool called ClickView. A lot of companies use it, very popular platform, but it's not so much the tool, it's just the change in the workplace that we're seeing by really putting that focus on how data is visualized rather than emailing spreadsheets and all that stuff you see in big enterprises.
Right. I believe the data management and also maybe big data will change our life a lot in the future. So thank you all of you for the actively participation in our panel discussion. And because of the time, our panel discussion has to stop now. To express our appreciation, we would now like to invite David and Dr. Ray to present the token of souvenirs to our guest speakers. David and Dr. Ray, please. First, we have Louis. Louis, please. maybe we can take a picture first. The camera is over there.
Oh, please look. Please look at here.
Camera is over there.
1, 2, 3. Maybe the phone.
Louis? Thank you, Louis. So, next, Louis, please remain on the stage because we will take a group picture afterwards. So next, we will have Eric. Eric from Joe.
Here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Eric. Last but not least, we have Gary. Gary from HABN.
Here. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Gary. Also, thank you, David and Dr. Ray. So now, let's invite all of you to take a group picture over here. Maybe with the prize. The camera is over there.
1, 2, 3.
So thank you everyone again. The DBSxCAL Talk is coming to an end. We would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you here. Without your support, today's event won't be so successful. We would like to have a big group photo, so please come up to the stage, everyone.
Everyone, please come to the stage. Let's